Hi guys, it's Ajin here. I'm pretty excited for the AMA today. Thanks Aviyel for the opportunity. Let's begin with the questions. Yeah, we have a question from Shine. Hey Ajin, what are some practices according to you that make a person a great maintainer? What is your advice to a person who is starting to contribute to open source community? Um, According to me, like being a successful maintainer is about building a great community out of your project and then providing support to your users in terms of documentation, answering their queries, fixing bugs, implementing feature requests, so on and so forth. And my advice to a person interested in contributing to an open source project is um, you should not be hesitant about doing it, just do it. Also, evangelize about your project, talk about it in conferences, blogs, podcasts, meetups, etc. I think this is something that I covered in one of my podcasts, but then again, as a short gist, it's around evangelizing a project. Talk about it, be very vocal about it, because people have to know about your project to even use it. Build and maintain great documentation for the project. There are great projects without any documentation, so it's kind of like not really very helpful to the community. People find it difficult to use, which in turn affects your project's popularity among the community. So build great documentation, and once your project matures, build a great community around the project, and make it in such a way that the community can self-serve um, the newcomers to the project. Like they can help by themselves. There is no real need for you anymore in the project. The community can take it from there. A great example is the Linux project. um, the other thing is, it's also very important to keep maintaining your project, keep it relevant when things changes over time. So make sure that your project is relevant, and then support your existing users. This is about creating a new project. But when it comes to contributing to existing project, always make sure that if they have like a project guideline, make sure that you read that project guideline. Make sure that your philosophy and the project's philosophy are in line. Also discuss with the maintainers before even writing or contributing any major changes or features. That will really help. Yeah, sure. So Andy says, I have been a user of MobSF for quite a while now. May I know what are the new features we can expect in the next update? Thank you for your efforts again. First of all, thanks, Andy. Thanks a lot for using MobSF. We have like a lot of things planned, but some of the interesting ones are, mm, we plan to support iOS dynamic analysis with Corellium, which is something that uh, that's going to improve the value of the project. Um, Up until now, we used to support only dynamic analysis of Android applications. So with this, we'll be soon supporting Corellium. So you can also perform dynamic analysis of iOS application. We also are planning to improve our SAST engine by using SemGrep as the core. This will hugely reduce the false positives and other unwanted noise. Mm, the guys from Quark, so it's a famous open source project. They recently contributed a new feature to MobSF that helps us in malware analysis. We are doing extensive QA and testing around the same. Hopefully, that will be soon available in the next release. That will be like a really neat features for malware analyst. And we also plan to redefine the user experience for MobSF. Since we kind of like cater a different, we kind of cater different niches of people like security engineers, developers, malware analysts, etc. We want to make the UI, configurable in such a way that it's more convenient and comfortable for you. Like, are you a common user? Then you don't want to go too much into the technical side of things. If you're a security engineer, you may or may not want to look into the malware analysis side of things, so on and so forth. So we are trying to fine tune the UI and make it in a more sensible way for the kind of customers or the kind of users who are using MobSF. We have a question from Jacob. Glad to have you here at Aviyel. What has been the biggest challenge you have faced while engaging with your community, specifically your journey and learnings working with contributors, evolution of the contributor guidelines, and any gatekeeping process that you follow? How important do you think these are? Right. That's a great question. It's a bit a long story, but I'll try to summarize it up. I think the biggest challenge that I faced during initial days is that it was very difficult to get contributors to the project, even though it's an open source project. People just started using it. I'm just barely getting feedbacks here and there. So initially, I saw a couple of students trying to use MobSF in their coursework, some of their project works, some research papers here and there. So I thought it might be a great idea if I can get collaboration with students so they can contribute to MobSF, and by that way I get contributors, and they can also show that work in their project work. So I created a post around that, shared it in LinkedIn and a couple of other social media, and I got 6-7 folks who are interested. These are all students who are working in their final years of projects or something very similar. We had a couple of meetings and brainstorming sessions online. We did a few of them, but for some reason it didn't really work out. Maybe they were too stressed with the academic activities and work. But then over here, we start to get contributors from here and there. We started to get full-time working guys coming as a contributor. Some of them were actually paid by their company to work and improve MobSF, which is really great. So eventually we started getting contributors, and I think now we have around 4 core contributors, including myself. And there are a lot of contributions that come from small and big contributions that come from the community as well, which is great. And I'm really grateful for all the contributions to the project. I think I would say that these contributors change the project in such a way that it would be difficult for me to achieve. And regarding the same, once we started seeing a lot of contributions coming from the community, we thought it's really nice to have a common project guideline so that all the contributions follow the coding standard and conventions that we use with the project. So we kind of created a coding contribution guidelines. We also have automated tests and GitHub actions that helps to reduce the turnaround time when someone makes a commit, where it try to do a lot of automated tests and then provide them feedback as early as possible so that they can rework or improve it. That's something that we do. Also, since we are a security project, we have to give great importance to security. So what we do is that whenever someone commits a feature to MobSF, we just make sure that they cannot commit binaries or compile code, especially from untrusted sources. And if they have to do that, then they have to provide an official checksum from one of the binaries or compiled codes sources. Otherwise, we don't allow such binaries to be committed to the project. So we do have some security checks as well when enrolling PRs. But in general, we love all the PRs, big or small, send them across. We love it. Yeah, we have a question from Nawaz Hamid. He says, currently the Google Play Store and iOS App Store have their own security tests to secure the apps before getting published in their stores. They usually get the mapping file from obfuscation tools, R8, ProGuard, etc. to reverse engineer the code. For example, he shares a link there that says, all Android apps undergo rigorous security testing before appearing in Google Play. So for those App Store or Play Store apps, does MobSF provides any additional security, or is it more effectively only for APKs that are site-loaded? Yeah, that's a good question. So the checks that are done by Play Store or App Store are mostly to detect deprecated APIs, some low-level privacy concerns, and mainly to identify malicious code or behavior in your apps before publishing them. The main intended feature of that is to prevent sharing malicious apps via official sources. And if I understand correctly, they don't do any application security testing. So when it comes to MobSF, we do application security testing. We try to reverse engineer the application if it's an Android application, and then go through the code and find insecure patterns. So and a lot of other application security stuff. We also look for privacy concerns from third-party SDKs, and we also help a malware analyst in identifying malicious behavior. So I would say that the value that you're getting is more from the application security side of things, which Google Play or App Store won't do, as per my understanding. And you mentioned about obfuscation. So in most general cases, obfuscation is not really a problem because MobSF can get the actual method implementations after reversing it. But there are cases when that general decompilation is not enough. So in such cases, you should be using runtime solutions like the dynamic analysis feature to capture the real APIs that are actually being used and called, and perform security tests accordingly. Right. I'll just read out the question from Anup. Hi, Ajin. What is your take on GitHub's focus on security? Where do you think a security tool can be aptly placed in the dev lifecycle for maximum usage and results? That's an interesting question. So I would say that over the last few years, both GitHub and GitLab are doing tremendous job to help application security programs. So they have like a lot of inbuilt security integrations and alerting mechanisms that are very easy and seamless to integrate with in the build pipeline. Anyone with a GitHub or GitLab account can set that up without a lot of effort, which is great. They support both open source and commercial security tools out of the box, which is again another great news. Like you can bring your own tooling, and you can integrate with these solutions without a lot of additional work. So I guess like GitHub Actions and GitHub CI has greatly reduced the pain points there, especially around integrating third-party tooling. And it's some of the features are more like turning on a button. Like a lot of security controls can be turned on by pressing a button, and that's really great. I generally love that feature, like making it. I mean, to me, it's more about like it was always about there's a barrier to entry. So things like these, they actually reduce the barrier, and it makes it easier for people to integrate and use application security practices. And towards the second part of the question, like what's the best place to put security tools? It really depends. So I would say that hook security controls in the lifecycle as and where you can. And we all know that the general abstract wisdom is that secure SDLC as and when the code is developed. So I see that today's code editors, they support plugins that can do security link checks as you write code. There are pre-commit hooks that can prevent developers from accidentally committing secrets, and then there is software composition analysis hooks to identify vulnerabilities and dependencies, or to identify any conflicting licenses. And you have like your standard set of pipelines in CI to integrate with SAS, DAST, or IAS tooling. The point being, there are different stages of the lifecycle where you can use certain security tools, and they work really great at that points of lifecycle. So it's about identifying these lifecycle hooks and adding the right tool or control for the job. So that sums it up. It's not about a particular point, but it's more about identifying the different lifecycle hooks and then adding security into it. Right. So Sam says, "Hey Ajin, thanks for taking the time for this AMA. What are the most common mobile security vulnerabilities you encounter? Also, what user experience design details does MobSF take the most pride in?" So to answer the first part of your question, so I have done a fair share of mobile application pen test and security reviews. Some of the major ones that I often see are developers writing code to bypass TLS certificate errors in client and web views for testing in the local environment, and they accidentally ship it to production. They kind of like forget to remove that bypass code, and it goes into the and it goes into production. The problem is that that's like publishing an app without TLS. Like it will gracefully accept any certificate that's provided by an attacker who wants to do an MITM attack. Um, the other thing that I commonly see is insufficient cryptographic algorithms or mods or parameters with respect to that. Um, there are actually a lot of examples in Stack Overflow which are like terribly insecure, which often get referred by a lot of developers, and I see them appearing again and again in certain code bases. So that's a very common thing I see. Um, Other thing that I normally see is around secrets. There's a lot of hard-coded secrets, high privileged API keys to AWS, Google Cloud, GitHub personal token, internal package managers, and sometimes access to like hidden admin-like interfaces, etc. Um, and Yeah, and one last thing is general application security issues with respect to web APIs, mostly injection attacks. This is not really mobile specific, but since API is a part of mobile, I just wanted to point that out as well. So these are some of the major things that I normally see while doing a penetration test or security assessment. Um, and regarding your next question about user experience, um, I would say that a lot of it has to do with constant feedback from the community. I'm really proud that the community has like a role in defining what the UX or feature of MobSF has than us trying to do something and then forcing it on the community. So the UX part, it's mostly influenced by the community. Some of it is actually developed or contributed by folks from the community. So I would say that a lot of it is like inspired or designed and contributed directly by the community. So I can't really take a lot of credit there. I mean, I'm in general, I'm just happy that uh, those contributions come from the community itself rather than us. Yeah, we have a question from Peace Be With You. Hello, Ajin. Building mobile application with frameworks like Flutter and React Native. What do you think about the new challenges it can bring to securing them since they have a single code base for more than one platform? Um, I really like the idea of writing code once and deploying it anywhere. It's generally a great idea, uh, but there are some problems underlying that. I'll come to that. Um, so the main challenges here that I would generally see is that since you have like a new language like Dart in case of Flutter or like JSX in case of React Native, there's also like a need to develop a static analysis rule set, and it might not be like as developed as what we have today with Java, Kotlin, or Swift. So that's like a challenge from like a tool developer point of view. And also like languages like Dart are compiled into native code, which means that it's almost really difficult to reverse engineer that to actual source code and look for insecure patterns in code, which is something that we do for Android applications. So that will make it a little bit difficult if you are working with the binaries and not the source code. But in general, in a way, I'm a little bit less concerned. Reason being that most of these languages, they are like focusing more on the UI aspect of it, and most of the OS level or application level, I would say like high level operations are done using certain APIs which are provided by these frameworks, like some of the OS APIs abstracted via these frameworks, or there are like third-party libraries that does the job for you. So what worries me is the fact that unlike like traditional apps, React Native or Flutter apps, they like at least some of them they depend on a lot of third party modules which are created by independent developers, So the number of third-party packages in a typical React Native or Flutter app is really high compared to that of a native application. So I kind of I'm really worried about the security around that code. And also a lot of these are actually pretty new. So I'm not really sure how effective your source code, software composition analysis tools or dependency manager is capable of identifying vulnerabilities in third-party code. So there's a lot of third-party code, and apps like these, majority of code comes from third-party SDKs and libraries than the actual code that you write. So that's like a big risk. Like there's a majority of code in the mobile application that's third-party. Who will own the responsibility or the risk that's arising from these third-party libraries? Do you have like the manpower and resource to do security analysis and vet the third-party libraries before using? What can you do about like preventing a possible supply chain attack? Do you have that controls in place today? So my concerns are more around the third party libraries that has to be shipped with a lot of these write once deploy anywhere tool. So yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed talking with the community, answering some of their questions with respect to MobSF, mobile security, open source, and cybersecurity in general. That was really great. We had like really great questions, and I'm grateful to Aviyel for providing such an opportunity and platform where I was able to interact with the community of MobSF. It's been a pleasure. Thanks a lot.